Amarachi Ikeen moved through Dove Crest Secondary like a shadow no one noticed. While others competed for attention, she stayed in the background, always quiet, always calm. Her notebook was her constant companion, pressed tight against her chest like a secret. Her neat braids framed a face that rarely looked up. In a school where the loudest voices ruled, silence made you invisible or worse, a joke. Tochi, the class prefect, often mocked her in front of everyone. "She's so boring," she would say, loud enough for Amarachi to hear. Nene, with her polished nails and perfect smile, laughed too. "She can't even introduce herself properly. Watch her stutter." Even some teachers overlooked Amarachi, calling on louder students, assuming she had nothing to say. They mistook quiet for weakness. But Amarachi was listening, watching, storing everything. Every laugh, every whisper, every insult. They didn't bounce off her. They settled, deep and quiet, like raindrops filling a cup. She wrote it all down. Her notebook wasn't just for class. It held poems, thoughts, pieces of herself she didn't trust the world with yet. It was her voice when she didn't speak. At home, her mother noticed how quiet she'd become, how quickly she disappeared into her room after school. But Amarachi never complained. She just wrote. She knew that one day her silence would make sense, that the world would turn and ask, "Where has this voice been hiding?" But for now, she waited. She sat at the back of the class, unseen, unheard, but never unready. Behind that silence was something burning, and though no one could see it, she felt it growing. They called her boring, invisible, forgettable. But what they didn't know was, her silence was not a void. It was a well filling slowly. And one day, they would all hear her, not because she screamed, but because the silence would end with a microphone. The school buzzed with excitement as Cultural Day approached. Posters lined the walls, and students whispered about what each class would perform. The principal had announced that every class must present a talent, drama, music, or spoken word. It was the biggest event of the year, with parents, guests, and even media expected. Tochi and her group of popular girls immediately claimed the spotlight with a flashy dance routine, full of loud beats and trendy TikTok moves. They took over the center of the room, practicing flips and laughs, as if the stage already belonged to them. During rehearsal time, the supervising teacher asked if anyone else had ideas or wanted to join. For a brief moment, silence fell. Then, slowly, Amarachi raised her hand from the back. Her voice was barely audible. "I'd like to perform something," she said. Tochi spun around with exaggerated shock. "Please, this is not a prayer meeting," she mocked. "Can she even talk?" Laughter echoed around the class. Nene chuckled and added, "She'll probably write a speech about how quiet she is." A boy near the window whispered, "She probably just wants to sweep the stage after the show." Amarachi's hand froze mid-air, then dropped to her lap. Her cheeks burned, but she said nothing. She stared at her notebook, willing herself not to cry until she got home. That afternoon, she walked straight into her room and wrapped herself in her mother's old wrapper, hiding her face. Her shoulders shook silently as tears soaked the fabric. Her mother entered gently and sat beside her, rubbing her back. "Who hurt you?" she asked, but Amarachi couldn't speak. The words were stuck behind the lump in her throat. That day, something changed inside her. Not anger, not hate, but a quiet fire. The kind that doesn't shout, the kind that waits. And underneath all the shame, the laughter, and the pain, Amarachi knew one thing for sure. The stage they mocked her off was the same one she'd someday stand on. And when that day came, they wouldn't be laughing. Amarachi sat on the edge of her bed, flipping slowly through the worn-out blue notebook she'd carried for years. Its cover was bent, pages nearly falling out, but inside were her treasures. Poems written in secret since she was 11. Each one held a piece of her. Words she couldn't speak aloud, feelings too big to share. They were about being quiet, about watching from the shadows, about pretending not to care when everyone laughed. They were about silence that wasn't weak, but strong. The kind of strength no one noticed. Her handwriting danced across the pages. Some lines crossed out, others circled like they still meant something important. That night, as rain tapped softly on the window, her mother, Mama Ifioma, knocked lightly and stepped in. She sat beside Amarachi, looking at the scattered notebook pages in her daughter's hands. "Chi," she said gently, "why don't you let them hear you?" Amarachi didn't look up. "Because they won't listen." Her voice cracked. "They never do." Mama Ifioma reached for her hand. "Then make them listen," she said. "Use their microphone." For a second, Amarachi stayed quiet. But something in her mother's voice hit differently, like a key turning in a locked door. Her eyes dropped to one poem in particular. Its title stared back at her. "The Ones You Don't See." She remembered writing it on a Sunday afternoon, after a long week of being ignored and laughed at. The words had come easily that day, like her silence had finally spoken for itself. Slowly, she reached for a pen and circled the title, her fingers trembling slightly. That moment wasn't loud. There was no music, no lights, just the quiet spark of decision. Amarachi closed the notebook and held it tightly to her chest. Maybe her voice wasn't loud like Tochi's, but it had weight, it had fire, and for the first time she wasn't afraid to let it be heard. The stage she feared now felt like a door, and her poem was the key. The next morning, Amarachi stood quietly outside the staff room, clutching her notebook tightly. Her heart pounded as she knocked and waited. Mr. Folklore, the Cultural Day supervisor, looked up from his desk and smiled. "Yes." She stepped in slowly and spoke in a soft voice. "Sir, I was wondering if I could perform a spoken word piece for Cultural Day." He looked surprised. "You?" She nodded, her fingers gripping the notebook like it held her courage. "I wrote something. I think it fits the theme." For a moment he studied her, then gave a small smile. "All right, Amarachi. Let's see what you've got. You'll open the show." Her eyes widened. "Open?" "Yes," he said. "Surprise us." Back in class, Tochi heard about it before the end of the day. She burst into laughter, loud enough for the entire class to hear. "Wait, Amarachi wants to speak on stage?" she said between giggles. "Please, I must record this embarrassment live." Nene laughed too. "What's she even going to say? Whisper us to sleep?" A few students joined in, already planning how they would react. Some said they'd yawn loudly. Others joked they'd shout "Amen" after every line like it was a sermon. The teasing continued, but Amarachi stayed quiet. She didn't argue. She didn't run. She just went home, opened her notebook, and stood in front of her mirror. For the next 5 days, she rehearsed every single word. She practiced her breathing, her pauses, her voice. She read her poem out loud until her voice no longer shook. In the kitchen, in her room, even in the backyard, she performed it like the stage was already under her feet. Every laugh they threw at her, she turned into fire. Every joke they made, she poured into her lines. She didn't care about their whispers anymore. She wasn't doing it for applause. She was doing it because her silence had something to say. And this time it would be heard. The school hall buzzed with excitement. Rows of chairs were filled, parents fanning themselves, teachers chatting, alumni smiling proudly, and even the local councilwoman sitting right in front. The decorations shimmered under the bright lights, and the air felt heavy with expectation. Tochi and her dance group had just performed. Their costumes sparkled, the music blasted through the speakers, and the crowd clapped wildly. It was flashy, loud, and full of energy. Phones were out. Videos were already being posted. The audience was alive. Then the microphone crackled. The MC stepped forward and read from a card. Next up, Amarachi Ikin with a spoken word piece titled, "The Ones You Don't See." The energy dropped. The room quieted. A few people exchanged confused glances. Some whispered, "Who?" But Amarachi was already walking to the stage. Her shoes echoed softly on the wooden floor. She wore no glitter, no makeup, just her school uniform and her notebook pressed to her side. As she reached the mic, it wobbled slightly. Her hands trembled for a second, but she held on. She adjusted the stand, took a long, slow breath, and looked up. The lights felt brighter. The room felt larger. But she didn't back down. Somewhere in the crowd, Tochi smirked, phone ready to record. A few students waited for something to laugh at, but Amarachi didn't notice them anymore. She opened her notebook, then looked past it. Her voice came out soft, but steady, the kind of quiet that makes people lean in. And in that stillness, as she began her first line, something shifted in the room. The same silence they used to mock her was now their focus. Every eye was on her. Every ear was listening. Her silence was gone. Her moment had started. And for the first time, the microphone didn't belong to the loudest. It belonged to her. Amarachi stood still, notebook in hand, as the hall waited. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was clear, calm, sure. It cut through the silence like a steady drumbeat. Her first words floated into the air, firm and sharp. I am not silence. I am the pause between storms. I am the echo you didn't notice until it broke your mirror. The room, once restless, froze. Heads slowly turned. Phones lowered. The noise faded into stillness. For the first time, everyone was listening. Tochi, who had been ready to laugh, sat up straighter. Her smirk dropped. Amarachi continued, her voice now deeper with emotion. You laughed because I whispered, but a whisper is just a scream that knows how to wait. There was no shaking in her tone, no fear, just truth. Her words felt like they had weight, like they were pressing into the hearts of everyone watching. The hall was quiet, but not empty. It was full of attention. Even the councilwoman leaned forward, her hands clasped. Amarachi's voice rose again, filled with quiet power. I am not empty. I just carry words like firewood. And today, you smell the smoke. Each line struck like a match. Her pain, her strength, her silence. They had all become fire. And now everyone could feel the heat. She didn't rush. She let each pause hang, let each word sink in. Then, slowly, she closed her notebook and took a small step back. For a second, no one moved. Then the claps began. Soft at first, then louder, then thunderous. People stood, cheered. Some even wiped their eyes. Amarachi didn't smile, didn't bow. She simply looked out at the crowd and breathed. This moment wasn't about fame. It wasn't about revenge. It was about being heard. And finally, she was. As Amarachi stepped back from the microphone, the hall remained silent for a heartbeat, like the world itself had paused. Then, the applause exploded. The councilwoman was the first to rise, clapping slowly but with deep respect. Others followed. Mr. Folklore stood too, adjusting his glasses with shaky hands, his eyes wide with surprise. Even the principal, who rarely showed emotion, blinked in disbelief. Amarachi had just shifted the entire mood of the event with nothing but words. She walked down the stage steps calmly, holding her notebook close. Her heart was racing, but her face stayed steady. People in the crowd leaned toward one another, whispering. One voice rose softly, "Who is she again?" Another replied, "That's the quiet girl, the one who just spoke." There was no longer any confusion in their tone, just curiosity and awe. The same students who once ignored her now looked at her like they were seeing her for the very first time. Tochi remained seated in the second row, frozen, her phone still in her hand. The smirk she had worn earlier was gone. She wasn't laughing. She wasn't even moving. For the first time, she had no words. As Amarachi walked past her, she didn't stop. But she did turn slightly, just enough to be heard. With a small smile, she said quietly, "Nice dance." Then she kept walking, head high, step steady. That moment said everything. Amarachi didn't need to shout or throw insults. Her voice had already done what it needed to do. It opened eyes, shifted power, and rewrote how people saw her. No revenge, no anger, just grace. The same girl they once laughed at had just changed the room with her truth. And now no one could unhear it. That evening, Amarachi sat on her bed, still holding the notebook that had changed everything. Her phone buzzed, then buzzed again. Curious, she opened her school email. The first message was from a youth NGO. They had seen a video of her performance and wanted her to perform at their upcoming youth arts forum. Before she could finish reading, another email landed. This one from a university radio station. They wanted to interview her live and talk about her writing journey, her silence, and how she found her voice. Amarachi's heart beat faster. Then came the third email, one that made her hands tremble a little. It was from the office of the councilwoman who had attended Cultural Day. The message was short but powerful. "We would love to have you speak at the Girls in Leadership event. You've got something rare. Let's make sure more girls hear it." Amarachi stared at the screen. Just hours ago, she was the quiet girl no one noticed. Now, people she had never met were asking to hear more. All because she finally spoke. Her phone buzzed again, but this time it was a notification from social media. Someone had tagged her in a story. She tapped it open and paused. It was Tochi. The same girl who once mocked her had posted the video of her performance. Under the clip, Tochi had written, "This girl shut the hall down fire clapping hands." Amarachi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It wasn't just about popularity or applause. It was proof that her words had reached people, even the ones who doubted her the most. She put her phone down and looked at her notebook, the same one filled with years of silent writing. Now it was her voice, and that voice was finally being invited into places it never reached before. Invitations were coming in, not just to perform, but to be seen, heard, and remembered. Weeks passed, but Amarachi's voice didn't fade. One afternoon, she received an official letter in the mail. She had been awarded a scholarship to attend a youth writing boot camp in Lagos. It was a competitive program, filled with talented teens from across the country. When she arrived, she was nervous but excited. The city was loud and fast, but Amarachi carried her quiet strength like armor. At the boot camp, she met a spoken word coach named Zakora. He was young, passionate, and known for helping shy writers step into the spotlight. Zakora read Amarachi's poems and paused after every page. "These aren't just poems," he said. "They're performances waiting to happen." With his help, she began to reshape her writing, adding rhythm, emotion, pauses, and power. Together, they turned her quiet notebook into a voice that could fill a room. She learned how to control her tone, how to stand with presence, and how to let her words speak for themselves. Not long after, she was invited to open for a TEDx youth event. The stage was bigger, the crowd wider, the lights brighter, but Amarachi didn't flinch. She walked up with calm confidence and delivered her poem like a soft storm. Her words moved people. After the performance, several audience members approached her, eyes full of emotion. Some asked for her book. She didn't have one yet, but that changed too. Her notebook, once only filled with personal lines, was transformed into a published poetry collection. The title was bold and honest, Whispers That Broke Glass. Every page carried a piece of her journey, from silence to strength, from fear to fire. Readers connected with her deeply. They saw themselves in her words, and every time she stood before a mic, Amarachi remembered where it started. Not in the spotlight, but in the shadows. Not with noise, but with truth. Because she had learned one powerful lesson: you don't need to be loud to be heard. You just need to speak from the right place. The graduation hall was filled with proud families, flashing cameras, and shining gowns. Banners hung high, celebrating a journey completed. When the principal stepped up to announce the valedictorian, everyone leaned in. "This year's top honor goes to Amarachi Ikin." The crowd clapped, some students wide-eyed with surprise. Amarachi stood from her seat, wearing the same calm expression she always had, but now her steps were stronger, steadier. As she walked toward the podium, her eyes met the same stage where it all began, the same microphone that once felt like a mountain. She paused in front of it, breathed in deeply, and looked out at the crowd. Former classmates, teachers, even Tochi sat in the front row watching. Amarachi didn't hold a speech paper. She didn't need one. Her voice, clear and steady, rang out across the hall. "To every girl who gets called too quiet, keep your fire. Silence isn't shame. It's just your voice waiting for the right moment." Her words didn't echo because of the microphone. They echoed because of the truth behind them. There were no flashy gestures, no background music, just her, standing tall with confidence she had earned word by word. As she finished, Amarachi looked around one last time. Then, slowly, she stepped back and let the microphone fall gently. A soft mic drop, not for drama, but for peace. The silence that followed was full of respect, of emotion, of understanding. And then, like a wave, the audience stood. Every single person rose to their feet, not because she was the loudest, not because she shouted, but because they finally heard her. She walked off the stage with a soft smile. Her voice had once been hidden behind pages and pain. Now it was the reason a whole room stood still. In that moment, Amarachi knew being quiet was never her weakness. it was just the way her power learned to grow. And now it had bloomed.